Houston, station jacks on 2, looking for a plug-in location for the wet dry vac, step 4.
We're checking Jack. We'll get back with you here in just a second. How copy?
OP1 Juliet 3, and you got a location for that?
Standby 1, we're checking. While I have you, though, I can let you know that in step 5.1, we, for the OGS AAA muffler, when you go to reinstall it, would like to have you apply some brake coat on that, specifically on the dovetail for the AAA muffler prior to reinstalling, so it doesn't get stuck again. For future removals, how does that sound?
Big Sporter, brake coat on the dovetail for the muffler install in 5.1. Sounds great.
Cool, cool. And for that UOP, it is Lab 1, Starboard 2.
the worst one, it's this one. There's a pretty big gap between the washer and, well, at the place of the washer.
And we copy, we see that. That is the number 10, yeah?
And that is number 10, correct? And now I'm going to show you number 11, which is not as bad, but still. Sure is kind of a little bit loose, but there's less of a gap. just as a heads up while you're no worries at all. I mean, I'm doing a get ahead test with routing of cables, so you take your time, no rush.
Understood. Thanks.
captured inspiring pictures, and of course ventured farther into space than anyone in history on a true test mission. You were, of course, the first crew to fly on this rocket and spacecraft, and that comes with risk. You accepted that risk for what we collectively stood to gain, all that we have now learned from your mission, and for where we will inevitably go from here. But you're not alone. You took all of us along with you. The contributions from the pioneers of decades past, the love of your families here on Earth, and those that were watching over you from the stars. Artemis 2 was the opening act in America's return to the moon. As we stand here this evening, the mobile launcher is preparing to go back to the VAB. Artemis 3 will start being assembled, and the next crew will begin preparing to play their part as we return to the lunar surface, we build the base, and we never give up the moon again.
What if you could claim a stake on what's man, woman, and child in America. That's how big this opportunity is. Now, here's the best news for you. I recently sat down with tech investing legend Jeff Brown to get all the details on this opportunity. And as you may know, Jeff is a former tech executive who picked Bitcoin, Tesla, and Nvidia before they exploded higher. And in this interview that you're about to watch, he's going to show you how to claim your stake in SpaceX before the company does in fact go public. It is set to be the biggest AI IPO ever. And to be clear, you don't need to have connections in Silicon Valley. You don't need to be an accredited investor, and you don't need to be rich. You can get started with as little as $500 and right from your very own computer. You've got to click on the link you see on the screen right now. Watch the short interview, get all the details, and then when SpaceX does go public this year, it could be the biggest payday of your life.
Well, I'm a cancer survivor, and I also have a handful of autoimmune challenges that I've been faced with. I was recently introduced to Meredith Shirk. She's changed the lives of thousands of women, and she's got so many superfood-dense recipes that are easy to make, they're delicious, and they're mindful. I think you're gonna love it.
Do you want to know what happens when you drink 1 tablespoon of turmeric before you poop?
Do you know what happens when you mix turmeric with ginger?
Have you ever seen this lady? She's all over Facebook saying that all those crazy diets and crash workouts are not the way to lose weight. It's insane. My wife was curious and she just gave it a try. I'm telling you, the weight was just coming off. And it all had to do with metabolism. You have to check her out.
Boiling an egg or frying an egg? What's better for fat loss? It actually doesn't matter at all. What actually matters is just adding 1 supreme superfood to your eggs in order to increase fat burn. Want to know what it is? Hey, you want to try keto with me? No, it's not going to help my belly fat. How about fasting? I tried that and it didn't work either. What about paleo? I heard meat is the best. Too expensive. What about I just ate less?
2 years, I've lost 13 pounds and 14 inches, so I'm over the moon with that.
Dehydration is one of the most common causes of chronic constipation. The food that you eat makes its way from your stomach to the large intestines. Now, if you don't have enough water in the body already, the large intestine soaks up the water from your food waste.
You get to that age that you say, I'm never going to be slim again, I'm never really going to feel good about myself anymore. So to see myself at that stage of weighing 180 pounds, I was like, wow, I couldn't stand it. I was dealing with all the menopause symptoms and all that. With having 11 kids and taking care of parents, I needed something that I knew I could actually accomplish.
I can eat things like chips and crackers and pizza and pancakes, but I'm doing it with the right combinations of spices and fat-burning foods.
The MetaBoost program, where you're talking about your metabolism and the different combinations of food that you've put together that help your metabolism increase, it got me over that hump of believing I could not do anything anymore.
Are bananas bad for you? So the problem is you just don't know what to combine the banana with or when to eat it for the best results. So click the link below to discover my free video where I show you the 5 superfoods that will help ignite your metabolism. Plus, you can mix these with With MetaBoost Easy 5-minute meals, anyone can actually regulate their metabolism, boost fat burning, and get in shape. So just click that link below and I'll see you on the other side.
And just generally feel fantastic. So if I can do it, you can too.
Don't waste any more time. Go ahead, click that link below and watch this free presentation right now.
Commander Wiseman, Reed, you said in an interview back in February that you hoped this mission would be forgotten, overshadowed by all that was to come after. But I'm very sorry to disappoint you all. Artemis 2 will always be remembered. It was the moment we all saw the moon again.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Integrity.
So we wear these Acta watches, and if you hit this button, the red light lights up, which tells you got a good battery. And I don't know why, but for the last 2 years when we wear these, hey Hopper, for the last 2 years when we wear these things, it just kind of brings us back into focus whenever we get a little distracted. So we did a lot of syncing when we were on this mission for no reason whatsoever. I have absolutely no idea what to say. This is 24 hours ago, the Earth was that big out the window and we were doing Mach 39, and here we are back at Ellington at home. Every one of us are just going to give a couple of words, but I get the mic first, so I'm going to start. Victor, Christina, and Jeremy, we are.
Where it really goes to the next level is that it's the only AI note taker that connects your meetings to the rest of your work. So stop stressing about taking notes and get the AI note taker that works for you. Get ClickUp AI Note Taker for your next meeting.
Циклоденон представляє нерегулярні місячні, різкі зміни настрою, менструальний біль. Я вже не можу.
Це симптоми гормонального дисбалансу. У мене було схоже і виявилось через стрес. Гінеколог порадив циклоденон. Гормональний баланс нормалізувався і цикл став регулярним.
Циклоденон. Не дай стресу вплинути на твоє жіноче здоров'я.
Thank you.
With, it's too big to just be in one body. And I wanted to thank our families for everything that he just said. So great words, great words, great words. I love you, but not just those 5 beautiful cocoa skin ladies right there. All of you. And I wanted to thank our leadership. And it's changed since we were here in April of 2023, but the qualities haven't. And we are fortunate to be in this agency at this time together. And so I'm gonna sit down. Thank you also to our air operations for this facility and for our ride home from San Diego. And I love you. Thank you.
a lot has happened since then, but or between those two moments, but the start and the end were human moments here on Earth. So several years ago, I was giving a speech and I was doing my usual talk about crew and crewmates and teamwork, and someone asked the question, what makes a crew? What is different about a crew than a team? And I was like, I got this. Opened my mouth confidently to tell them everything I knew about being a crewmate. And everything that came out of my mouth was completely without value. I was like, yeah, crews, they're in space and they work together, but they eat together too. So, they're a crew. And boats have crews, you're a crew if you're on a boat. Helps if you have a paddle. That'll be good. That'll make you a crew. But the last 10 days, I've gotten a little bit of a better answer. It was all the blackness around it. Earth was just this lifeboat hanging undisturbingly in the universe. Uh-oh. So I may have not learned, I know I haven't learned, everything that this journey has yet to teach me. But there's one new thing I know, and that is, planet Earth, you are a crew. Thank you.
Today is maybe 3 of the human experiences for us. And you haven't heard us talk a lot about the science, the things we've learned, and that's because they're there, and they're incredible. But it's the human experience that is extraordinary for us. And it sounds like maybe for you too. And so I think I'll start with gratitude. Gratitude for my family, gratitude for NASA, for its leadership, gratitude for Canadian Space Agency, gratitude pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes, et j'ai hâte de pouvoir revenir avec Reed, Christina, Victor, au Canada. Gratitude for the bravery and the courage for the teams to be no-go when we were no-go and go when we were go. That took a lot. The last one is love. What you saw was a group of people who loved contributing, having meaningful contribution, and extracting joy out of that. And what we've been hearing is that was something special for you to witness. And the reason I had them form up here with me is because I would suggest to you that when you look up here, you're not looking at us. We are a mirror reflecting you. And if you like what you see, then just look a little deeper. This is you. Dude, come on.
That's the energy. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Canadian Space Agency President Lisa Campbell.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Ça va bien? Everybody's doing well? Excellent. Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy, it's wonderful to see you safely back on Earth. For the first time in over 50 years, humanity has returned to lunar orbit, and the world was watching.
Легендарні позиції Макдональдс викрадені з усього світу. Встигни спробувати, доки ми їх не повернули.
Supporting the mission on console as Artemis Capcom, Canada is incredibly proud to be part of this endeavor. It's a powerful moment for our partners at NASA, for Canada, and for everyone who believes in what humanity can achieve together. Our deep and enduring partnership in space, working side by side in the shuttle era, through the International Space Station, and now through Artemis, all the way Teamworks look like at its very best. It was such a pleasure to connect with you live from Canada, even at 3 in the morning. During your mission, it was such a powerful example of unity in action, and we had a full room at 3 and 2 in the morning. Together, this historic journey has reminded us that exploration begins with curiosity and that big dreams are worth pursuing and worth sharing. With your safe return to Earth, you've completed a new chapter in humanity's return to the moon, and we're so proud. Félicitations, Artemis II. Félicitations et bon retour à la maison.
We are proud to have strong bipartisan congressional support for the United States space program, and we're honored to be joined by members of Congress here with us today. Please join me in welcoming U.S. Representative
me to flower them up. The most inspiring thing that you would like to relive would be the launch and seeing that eclipse. And Administrator Eisenman sent me the picture of that eclipse, which I have on my phone and which I'm going to blow up and put in my Washington office too. And it's an awesome thing. That's all I can say. You are welcome home. We're so very proud of you. You've inspired not only America and Canada, but the entire world and generations of humans that are going to be coming after you. We're grateful not only for your courage and your commitment, but also for the sacrifices made by your families. As my wife and I have 17 grandkids, I don't like to be away from them more than about 24 hours. So when you're 750,000 miles away, to keep the Artemis program moving forward and ensuring America's return to the moon remain the primary objective. And while we celebrate this extraordinary achievement, we must also recognize what it represents. This mission is a critical step forward in achieving President Trump's vision of returning Americans to the moon in 2028. And doing so before our competitors do. And there is still much work ahead, but this moment should renew our confidence, and it most certainly has. The United States is ready for this challenge, and we are ready to lead. And as we lead in space, we carry with us the principles that have always guided us: freedom, innovation, and opportunity. And this is only the beginning of our journey. America is going back to the moon.
Note taker to my meetings, even if I can't attend. My AI note taker records the entire meeting and creates a full transcript. After the meeting, I get a doc with the recording, takeaways, and even the action items. AI turns these action items into tasks so we actually get things done. ClickUp makes work easy, from personal projects to running a multi-billion-dollar company. Click the link below to create your workspace for free.
Дарсіл допомагає зміцнити, очистити, відновити печінку та надати їй життєвих сил. Дарсіл – сила Дарсілу для твоєї печінки. Від Дарниці.
Well, I cannot tell you what an honor it is for me to be here. As a young child, I would look to the stars like so many others, and I actually wanted to be an astronaut. I still want to be an astronaut, truth be told, but and as we look at creation and behold the stars and the moon, we begin to think about what is mankind from God's perspective. And so this trip gave us a different way of looking at ourselves. And the way that you have displayed the best of us has been extraordinary and has given us a perspective as we continue to push ahead into the future. Your travels, your exploration, the years of work, the dedication for you, for your teams, all the prep that goes into this. And yes, as someone mentioned, thankfully, Administrator for mentioning the taxpayer as well involved in this as well, and our job in Congress to steward that. But this is a noble cause. It's a worthy cause. It's worthy of our best efforts as a nation. And thank you for what you've done. You've given us something to dream of in. You've inspired us. And you've given us something that we can build upon for the future. God bless you. Thank you for your work. Thank you, NASA, and all of you here. God bless.
looking at you and knowing the fortitude that you have and seeing the direction that this agency is going in right now, we would be remiss if the four of us didn't look right there and say, it is time to go and be ready, because it takes courage, it takes determination, and you all are freaking going, and we are gonna be standing there supporting you every single step of the way in every possible way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed, and thank you to all of our representatives. We could not explore the unknown without your support, and that's for sure. Well, what an incredible milestone. Today, we've celebrated the successful return of a mission that carried humanity back into deep space, captivating millions, inspiring the next. This is just the beginning. We are entering a new era of exploration, returning to the moon, building a sustained presence there, and preparing for missions to Mars. And we're glad you're on this journey with us. You can continue to follow NASA and Artemis on NASA Plus and across our social channels. But before we close, let's bring our crew back to center stage one more time for a big Texas round of applause and a big welcome home.
All the staff at NASA, and speaking of just the incredible experience that they have returned home from. Joining us now, retired Lieutenant Colonel David Mahan. He's the former commander of the U.S. Air Force's 1st Air Force Detachment 3. That's the group that coordinates these rescue operations with NASA. And Colonel, thank you for joining us. Now, what was your reaction to the visible emotion we saw from that crew today?
That was absolutely amazing. There was so much joy and happiness, not just with the families, but with everybody that's there. And one of the things that you probably saw through that entire press conference is it's a family. It's not just a job or anything like that. They're family, and they're a crew. And just the words that they had to say was very, very emotional, and it was really awesome to see.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to be bonded before they left, but coming back, as they said there, They're bonded for life. And now, Colonel, you were involved in the recovery of Artemis 1 back in 2022.
Що забажаєш? Потрібно лише замовити. Glovo везе тобі все.
Big dreams start small. At GoDaddy, we help you take that first step and every step after. From getting your domain to creating your website, email, and online security, we've got you covered. You don't need to be a tech expert. You just need a starting point. GoDaddy gives you the tools, the expert support, and the push to make it real. Your brand starts here with GoDaddy.
It was huge. I think one of the commentators had mentioned thousands, tens of thousands of people behind the scenes. Just from the military side of the house, you had the Air Force, the Space Force, various aspects of Space Command. So you're talking thousands and thousands of people working behind. Was the most important thing. And it was absolutely precise and impressive to watch.
Just incredible. Retired Lieutenant Colonel David Mahan, thank you so much. 48 Hours returns after a short break, but before we go, we do want to take a look back at some of the history-making moments of the Artemis II mission. You're watching CBS News 24/7, the #1 free streaming news service in America.
And here they are, NASA's Artemis II crew.
4 brave explorers ready to ride the most powerful rocket. RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
There's nothing that prepares you for the breathtaking aspect of seeing your home planet.
Hello, Artemis II. This is Apollo astronaut Jim Lovell.
Perfect descent.
Use integrity. Splashdown. Sending post-landing command now.
Splashdown confirmed. From the pages of Jules Verne to a modern-day mission to the moon, a new chapter of the exploration of our celestial neighbor is complete. Integrity's astronauts back on Earth.
Money Watch is your no-nonsense guide to taking control of your finances, where I offer practical, real-world advice with no jargon and no judgment. I'm Jill Schlesinger. Listen to Money Watch wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Major Garrett in Washington.
To execute the people that were inside.
There were 3 victims shot, each with single shotgun blast. The shooter comes to carry first, fires.
Відкрий, насолодись, відчуй легкість. Боржомі.
А я йому й кажу, у пумбі 3 категорії кешбеку.
Кешбеку?
Кешбеку.
А, погорячився.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. Overhead hatch is closed. Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main B bus undervolt.
Apollo 13 is a familiar story. The third lunar landing aborted after an in-flight emergency turned a nominal flight into a rescue mission. The story's been told in documentaries with astronauts and flight controllers, and an amazing movie starring Tom Hanks. So what do I have in my so much worse when you really unpack it and understand it, but it was also less chaotic. Jerry told me that Ron Howard added background actors walking in the halls to create a sense of tension and urgency that wasn't really present in Mission Control. The truth is, Houston wasn't blindsided or caught off guard by anything once they were in emergency mode. It's really interesting to see, through the source material, just how they worked the problem. This might not be the version Hollywood told to satisfy audiences, but I think you'll still be satisfied at the end of this. All right, let's go to the moon. Fair warning, I'm about to hit you with a lot of names, but we've got to meet our cast of characters, both human and machine. The original crew for Apollo 13 was Commander Jim Lovell, Lunar Module pilot Fred Hayes, and Command Module pilot Ken Mattingly. To ground you in more familiar faces, that's Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, and Gary Sinise. They started training for their mission on August 1st of 1969, just 1 week after Apollo 11 splashed down. Jack came to NASA from North American Aviation, North American Rockwell after a merger in 1967, which was the company that built the Command Service Module. The same way Fred was assigned to the Lunar Module, Jack had been integral in developing troubleshooting and emergency procedures for the Command Module. He was considered one of the foremost experts on the spacecraft. The Command Service Module for Apollo 13, christened Odyssey, was internally known as spacecraft CSM-109, and its story starts long before it was assigned a crew or a mission, all the way back on February 26, 1966. And I promise this isn't just superfluous detail, we do have to go back this far. This is the date that North American awarded the Beech Aircraft Corporation a contract to build the service module's cryogenic gas storage tanks to hold super cold liquid oxygen and hydrogen. The service module was what made Apollo missions possible. This largest piece of the stack held most of the consumables used on a mission, and its engine, the Service Propulsion System, or SPS, was the one the crews needed for critical events like slowing down into lunar orbit. Two buses that distributed the power. Fuel cell 1 was connected to main DC bus A, fuel cell 2 was connected to DC main buses A and B, and fuel cell 3 was connected to main DC bus B. Solid-state inverters converted that direct current power into alternating current power that was then distributed through the spacecraft's electrical system in the command module via an external umbilical. The service module also supplied some power to the lunar module during the coast to the moon. The oxygen and hydrogen tanks in the fuel cells weren't connected to each other, neither were the fuel cells connected to one another. The astronauts were also able to manually isolate individual fuel cells and control the direction of power flow if something malfunctioned. These were all built-in safety measures to prevent one failure in the system from crippling an entire mission. The oxygen tanks themselves were insulated spheres with an inner and outer shell and a dome over top to enclose the lines that carried fluids and wires for electrical power and signals. Inside each tank, there were two cylindrical units. One was a heating coil with small fans to stir the cryogenic oxygen. and lifting the shelf out of the spacecraft with a huge crane. But one bolt was still in place. When technicians lifted the shelf, it caught on the bolt, the fixture broke, and the shelf fell about 2 inches. The stray bolt was removed, and the shelf lifted away on the second attempt. No one thought much of the incident. Engineers calculated the forces associated with a 2-inch drop were so low it was unlikely anything was seriously damaged. So the tanks were updated, and in January of 1969, the shelf was reinstalled in Service Module 109. A month later, that spacecraft was assigned to Apollo 13. Apollo 13's Saturn V rolled out to the launch pad on December 15th. The next day, the launch was pushed back from its early mid-March target date to April 11th to give the crew a little more time to prepare for their landing at Fra Mauro. Pre-launch tests with the Saturn V on the pad revealed an ongoing problem with that one oxygen tank. Technicians could fill and pressurize it just fine, but it didn't empty like it was supposed to, and it happened more than once, so it wasn't an isolated incident. The only way technicians symptoms in flight, and NASA couldn't risk him being out of action at a critical moment. The decision was finally made, though not without pleading from Jim Lovell, to ground Ken Mattingly and swap him out with Jack Swigert just 8 days before launch. The new crew had days to get into sync of working together. It was never about getting Jack up to speed, it was making sure they could react as a team. And so the stage is set for the third lunar landing mission. A minor technical issue and a last-minute crew change, but this is exactly why NASA has such rigorous training and testing and backup crews. On the morning of launch, Apollo 13 isn't the biggest story. The third lunar landing doesn't feel exciting, especially in light of the news that Paul McCartney is going for a solo career and the Beatles' future is looking grim. Still, some 100,000 people show up to watch Apollo 13 leave the Earth.
8, 7, 6, ignition, 4, 3, 2.
Susceptible to a phenomenon known as the pogo effect, which for once in NASA's life isn't an acronym. It's a reference to a pogo stick. The force of the thrusting engines, the pumps managing the fluids, and the resonance of the propellant ducts combine to create longitudinal vibrations, and the rocket bounces like a giant pogo stick. The center engine, number 5, is shaking so much that it shuts down early.
Get board. Roger, we confirm inboard out. 13 Houston, stand by for S4B to COI capability. Mark. S4B to COI, Roger. Roger.
COI is contingency to orbit. This is an abort mode for if the second stage fails but the spacecraft is otherwise fine. They can use their third stage, the S4B, to go into Earth orbit, but that's as far as it'll be able to take them. They'd have to go through a backup Earth orbital Apollo flight, which no one wants to do.
Negative, not right now, flight. All the other engines are go.
And are you the one the story at X5?
Flight confirmed,
Jim, Houston, we don't have a story on why the inboard out was early, but... You are go for TLI.
Now on their translunar coast, the next big event is transposition and docking, which is the formal term for getting their lunar module out of storage. The lunar module, or just LEM, is stored underneath the main spacecraft during launch, so they have to get it. They separate from the S4B, then turn around and carefully dock with the LEM, pulling it out of its protective casing. And that's the Apollo stack complete, ready for a lunar landing.
LEM a little bit more. Hard dock to Houston. Roger, understand hard dock. Good deal.
The S4B, meanwhile, has an interesting mission of its own on Apollo 13. It's remotely put on a course to the moon where it will impact and trigger the seismometer left by Apollo 12 on November of 1969. Crashing something with a known mass and a known velocity is an excellent way to get data about the moon's inner structure. For the first 3 days, the flight is routine, or as routine as you can be going to the moon. There's a lot of housekeeping and checking on systems. The astronaut's primary companion is Capcom, short for Capsule Communication.
Reports indicate that they are slowly returning to work, and you'll be happy to know that the controllers here in the MOCR are still on the job.
I just said thank goodness for that.
Okay. Today's favorite pastime across the U. Have you guys completed your income tax?
How do I apply for the extension?
Yeah, Joe, I gotta. It's too funny. Things kind of happen real fast down there, and I do need an extension. I didn't get mine filed. I'm really serious. Would you just...
You're breaking up the room down
time in it. I may be spending time in another quarantine besides the one that they're planning for me.
We'll see what we can do, Jack. We'll get with recovery and see if we can get the agent out there in the Pacific when you come back.
One of the bigger items on a coast to the moon are mid-course correction burns. These are done to fine-tune the spacecraft's trajectory. When it started that pops up on that third day. Oxygen tank 2 is reading off-scale high.
Ready, copy.
And on the O2 we have 81%. However, we show the O2 tank 2 reading off-scale high now. We're quite sure it's a sensor failure. We'd like you to verify it with your onboard reading.
Okay, stand by. Joe, we confirm our gauge reading is the number 2 O2 tank is reading off-scale high now, but tank just told me it was okay when you first looked at it this morning.
We verify that. At 46:45, we had 82%, and apparently when he stirred the cryos, the sensor broke.
Okay.
The sensor in question is the quantity gauge, one of the 2 elements built inside the tank. It's made of 2 nested aluminum tubes that act as a capacitor. When a static charge is set up between the tubes,
all the cryo tanks at slightly more frequent intervals than have been planned. And the first time is now, and we'll be calling you probably every 5 or 6 hours, except during sleep periods and high activity periods. We'd like you to do it now, over.
Okay, we'll start a cryo now.
Thank you.
It's such a non-issue that Gene Kranz, current flight director on Shift and Mission Control, whom you're imagining is Ed Harris, notes it as no sweat in the flight director's mission log. They just need to keep an eye on it. That job falls to ECOM, the Electrical, Environmental, and Consumables Manager. On Gene's white team, that's Cy Liebergott, dramatized by Clint Howard.
Okay, sounds good. We'll get the TV started right away. Roger.
The Capcom on Gene's white team is Jack Luzma, and I'm sorry we do have 2 Jacks in play, I know it's confusing. Jack Luzma doesn't tell the crew that none of the major US networks broadcast their TV transmission. It's 8:30 p.m. in Houston, primetime, and a tour of the LEM isn't as exciting as baseball, the Dick Cavett Show, or a rerun of I Love Lucy.
Okay, 13.
Toward over the side hatch at the aft side of the service module. Okay, Jack, I'm looking out the right window now, and you can see the objective. And now Fred's engaged in his favorite pastime I found out on this flight so far.
He's not in the food locker, is he?
That's his second favorite pastime. He's rigging his hammock for sleep on the lunar surface now to try it out to see what it's going to be like.
Roger, sleeping and then eating.
Okay, well, we can show you now a little added benefit. We've got the drogue on Fred's couch in the command module right now. And underneath his couch, we've got the probe stowed. Quite a big cumbersome device. We might give you a quick shot of our entertainment on board the spacecraft, which has been keeping us company for some time.
shield to protect the crew during their fall through the atmosphere. So the command module has 3 batteries on board to provide the re-entering spacecraft with power for the last couple hours of a mission. These batteries can be used in flight if the crew needs more power than the fuel cells alone can generate, but it's a short-term power boost, and it's crucial they be recharged immediately after to make sure they're full for that final mission phase. They also check the reading on the docking index at this point. The docking index number tells them the relative position of the command and lunar modules while docked, which is important for when they configure the lunar module's attitude reference before Jim and Fred take it down to the lunar surface. This one's a little tricky to get your head around. In transposition and docking, when they collected the LEM from its stowed position, both spacecraft were moving freely in space, but their docking mechanism is symmetrical, so it doesn't matter if they're twisted relative to one another. They can dock, but be offset around their x-axis, which runs from engine bell to engine bell. Because they'll use the command module's inertial platform orientation to set up the LEMs, all the contractors to make sure their systems could tolerate this higher voltage, but the change somehow didn't get to the company that made the thermostatic switches for Beech, who made the tanks for North American, who made the CSM for NASA. So we're looking at a subcontractor supplier here. The thermostatic switches designed to interrupt power to the heaters to protect the tanks couldn't function at this higher voltage. So instead of cutting power, they welded themselves shut. This left the heaters running, raising the internal temperature to more than 900 degrees Fahrenheit, or a little over 500 centigrade, hot enough to leave the electrical insulation cracked and brittle, damaging the Teflon coating. But why did they need to use the heaters in the first place? Well, that goes back to when the tank was dropped during its removal for refurbishment, October 21st, 1968. The jolt from that 2-inch fall might have damaged the fitting used to fill and drain the tank, leaving it able to fill but not drain. That set up the scenario where the tanks reached unsafe high temperatures during not one, but 2 separate tests. Now, equipment bay, and Fred is in the LEM. The crew hears a dull but definite bang, just the noise moving through the spacecraft structure. Fred feels a slight shudder, and Jim, who's floating freely, doesn't feel anything at all. The dip in voltage triggers the caution and warning system, and that gives the crew a master alarm. In that same instant in Houston, Inco, the instrument and communications officer, sees on his console that the spacecraft suddenly switches to wide beam communications, then hears a strange crackle over the radio, almost like it veered off course, which is exactly what happens. The force of the oxygen tank rupturing knocks the stack off kilter, and it starts wildly rotating, triggering the clusters of reaction control or RCS thrusters to fire in a losing battle to restore the spacecraft's attitude.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here.
Overhead hatch is closed.
5 guns.
Go, guys. This is Houston. Say again, please.
We've had a hardware restart. I don't know what it was.
Okay. Yes. Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main B bus undervolt.
You see an AC bus undervolt there?
that delivers propellant to the RCS thrusters. The indicators, which are called talkbacks, are barber poled. Gray means normal, striped black and white means trouble. There are magnetic solenoid valves in the propellant lines that are fairly sensitive. They can close from a jolt, like when the CM separates from the S4B, but they haven't done any maneuvers that would jolt them for a while, which is the first indication that the bang they heard wasn't just a noise.
Okay, AC2 is showing zip. I'm trying to reconfigure on that, Jack.
Ecom, you were seeing any AC problems? Look like you've got a lot of instrumentation problems there. Go ahead. That's firm. Well, let's get some recommendations there, Si, if you got any better ideas.
Main bus A undervolt now, too, Sean.
Main A undervolt.
He's got fuel cells 1 and 3 are offline. We've got main A volts. We have no main B volts. Have him attempt to reconnect the fuel cells. Fuel cell 1 to main A, fuel cell 3 to main B.
Okay, fuel
Just
cell.
try that.
Okay, now, do we have instrumentation?
System and put the fuel cells back to their usual configuration. Then Houston wants them to check the helium valve on a bank of RCS thrusters that doesn't seem to be firing properly. But there's a bigger indication of trouble. The reactants, the cryogenic hydrogen and oxygen that react in the fuel cells, are no longer flowing to fuel cells 1 and 3.
Can we review our status here, Si, and see what we've got from a standpoint of status? What do you think we got in the spacecraft that's good?
8 minutes since the explosion, and it's starting to become clear that this isn't an instrumentation problem or something to do with the high-gain antenna. Fred connects battery A, one of the re-entry batteries, into the power grid to boost their failing voltage and keep their systems running.
Okay, Houston, are you still reading 13?
Stand by.
That's affirmative. We're reading you. We're trying to come up with some good ideas here for you. 13, Houston, we'd like you to verify a couple readings for us. We'd like the nitrogen pressure on fuel cell 1. We need the oxygen pressure on fuel cell 2.
Nitrogen and send it to Earth for interpretation. And the erratic movement is raising a new worry for Gene Kranz. RCS fuel is a consumable like anything else. They have a finite amount and it's pretty strictly rationed to make sure they can manage their attitude throughout the flight. They need RCS fuel, and they're using way more than they should be right now. Meanwhile, Telmu, who's the LEM Electrical, Environmental, and EVA Mobility Officer, basically the ECOM equivalent for the lunar module, notices that the LEM's heater's current is also behaving erratically. But it's one more piece of information than Gene can deal with for the moment.
Hi, Telmu. Go, Telmu. The LEM heater currents become essentially static. Raj, let's solve one problem at a time. Come back to me later on in it.
The LEM's heater seems minor, but it's actually indicating the breadth of the problem because everything right now is tied to the SM's power, including the LEM. It's drawing power from the fuel cells to run heaters that keep vital systems from freezing on the translunar coast. Usually when that power transfer is cut, when the spacecraft separate, the LEM switches to its own internal power, but telemetry says that hasn't.
Okay. Roger. Yeah, that's because of AC. And it looks to me, looking out the hatch, that we are venting something.
Crew thinks they're venting.
We are venting something out into space.
Roger, we copy your venting. Copy that.
It's gas of some sort.
Okay, let's everybody think of the kind of things we'd be venting. GNC, you got anything that looks abnormal in your system? Negative, Mike. How about you, ECOM? You see anything that, with the instrumentation you got, that could be venting?
Nearly 15 minutes after the explosion, and Jim sees the gas out the window and realizes what's happened, or at least why their oxygen levels have plummeted. It's not instrumentation, and it doesn't resolve everything, but the picture starts to get clearer. Now they have to figure out, are they leaking or venting? In either case, Gene Kranz is eyeing the lunar module.
Okay, now let's everybody keep cool. We got the LEM still attached. The LEM spacecraft's good, so if we need to get back home, we got a LEM to do a good portion of it with. Okay, let's make sure that we don't do anything.
In the IMU correspond to the three axes of motion, pitch, yaw, and roll, and they're set at right angles to one another with a central platform mounted in the innermost gimbal. The outer gimbal is mounted to the navigation base that is itself mounted rigidly to the spacecraft. The system doesn't have any gears, so there are no concerns about wear or accuracy, and the gimbals are able to move freely. In flight, from the IMU's perspective, the spacecraft moves freely around it, while it stays rigid in space. As the IMU moves, it gives the guidance computer mathematical information about the spacecraft's position relative to its last calibration. Data from the IMU was displayed to the crew on the Flight Director Attitude Indicators, what's commonly referred to as the 8-ball. And Houston has a digital version in Mission Control. But there's an inherent limitation to the IMU having only 3 gimbals, and we have to remember that the IMU works in mathematical terms. The way the system works, the middle gimbal moving also moves the inner gimbal. It's possible for the middle gimbal to move away from the zero orientation He and a few other guys were playing baseball that afternoon, and when he got home, his wife passed on an urgent message to get to mission control. He went in sweatpants. The classic image of white shirts and skinny black ties broke down pretty quickly. 20 minutes after the explosion, it's becoming clear that the Odyssey's electrical power system is dying, and ECOM controllers are trying to figure out whether they've lost both oxygen tanks. Either way, they can see this mission is about to become a task of power management. They start by having the crew reduce their power consumption by 10 amps to keep the power systems on a single fuel cell and take their reentry battery offline. Remember, they don't want to be draining this vital source. None of this is standard procedure, but the crew has the, thankfully weightless, 20-pound flight data file on board that has all the checklists, flight plans, star charts, and references, and in this case, emergency plans. Half an hour after the explosion, and Houston wants a proper look at oxygen tank 2's status. The sensors measuring the quantity and temperature draw power from AC bus 2, which isn't working, so Houston has the there's power and oxygen in that spacecraft. The LEM as a lifeboat is fast becoming an option. Cy Liebergott is laser focused on keeping the Odyssey able to return to Earth. He requests the crew reduce their power output even more. Reentry Battery A has been online now for 32 minutes, and they can't recharge it without the fuel cells, so that becomes a priority, which means they need to troubleshoot the cryo tanks. They've tried to recover fuel cell 1 by removing it from the power grid. Now they're trying the same thing on fuel cell 3, the other one that's malfunctioning. They also want to reconfigure the RCS thruster power to try to manage their attitude issues. Then Cy has the crew isolate the surge tank, a small oxygen tank in the command module they'll need for re-entry. Oxygen tank 1 should be pressurized at a little over 900 psi, but it's plummeting. There's a chance they can restore the pressure a little using the tank's heaters, but that could also help it vent faster, and it's going to trigger another main bus A undervolt since they're already in a low power state. They try it and it doesn't help, and Cy comes to the same conclusion as both Gene and Fred.
time planning and using the SPS.
Okay, Flight.
So I think all of our return to Earth type planning should be assuming the use of the LEM, DIPS, and or RCS. And I think third priority down the line should be CSM RCS.
Okay, and I'm assuming you'd want fastest possible return.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
Okay, we'll work on it from that sideline flight.
Okay.
Should be no problem.
I copy that flight.
Just about 55 minutes since the explosion, and Gene Kranz has pretty much written off the main spacecraft, the Command Service Module. The LEM DIPS is properly the LEM DPS, the Descent Propulsion System, pronounced DIPS. We'll go through the LEM systems in more detail in just a minute. The FIDO who Gene's talking to is the Flight Dynamics Officer, and he's responsible for the flight path. Now that the mission has changed, FIDO needs to figure out how to amend their trajectory. Remember, Apollo 13 left its free return trajectory yesterday. They can't just swing around the moon and come home anymore. They have to make a course correction burn. The other SPS if it failed to fire at the moon. There's no scenario on the books for a LEM DIPS burn and a command service module that can't provide life support. So Houston knows they can use the LEM to do the burn to get them home, but that's only part of the battle. 56 minutes from the explosion, Cy Liebergott realizes he only has one move left.
Go ahead, Ecom.
Okay, listen, there is a possibility that we blew a O2 line in one of the fuel cells, and it's effectively manifolded there, of course. Now, I want to shut off one of the reactant valves to one of the fuel cells, and that would be fuel cell 3, since its O2 pressure is gone. Now, fuel cell 1's O2 pressure is trying to stay up there at 45 psi. Maybe the problem is in fuel cell 3.
That sounds like a good assumption right there.
Yeah, fuel cell 3 is lost anyway as far as
flight GNC.
Cy's thinking is that if fuel cell 3 is damaged, and that's where they're losing oxygen, reopened, and it's a move that forces their abandoning a lunar landing. Mission rules say you can't land on the moon with only 2 fuel cells. At this point, they're a day away from the moon. If they're somehow able to figure out the source of the issue and get the remaining fuel cells up and running, there's no question of going for a landing anymore. Jack Swigart starts going through the fuel cell shutdown procedure on board, which conveniently he wrote. An hour and 10 minutes after the explosion, there's a shift change in mission control with Glyn Lunny's black team taking over. Gene's white team, though, isn't going home.
Let me go back over this again. We're heading over to Glenn. I'd suggest the white team goes back and starts going through the D-log of the data. In other words, let's see if we can go back to the initial conditions and work in that problem to see if we can find out what happened, and we may find some better clues as to what to do, and let the fresh guys come on and try to figure out where do we go from here.
They all moved to room 210 to review telemetry D-logs and figure out the LEM low power profile, because the situation hasn't improved. Closing the reactant flow to fuel cell 3 didn't fix the oxygen tank pressure.
Okay, Jack, we want you.
Which means now is a great time to get acquainted with the lunar module Aquarius. The LEM was a pretty phenomenal spacecraft built specifically to land on the moon. It can't fly another mission, and it certainly can't return to Earth. Not only does it not have a heat shield, it doesn't have fuel cells like the service module, it has batteries. There are 4 400 amp hour batteries in the descent stage that provides a nominal output of 30 volts. The ascent stage has 2 296 amp hour batteries. Each stage has 2 electrical control assembly units that manage power output through 2 28 volt direct current power buses, while alternating current at 115 volts comes from 2 inverters. Electronic control boxes connect the systems in both stages. In English, they have a decent amount of power and a complicated system for accessing the 2 separate systems, but it's specifically designed to support the LEM's own mission, which is a 2 or 3 day, depending on the flight, trip down to the lunar surface. On a normal mission, the LEM separates from the main spacecraft once in orbit around the moon. It uses its big descent engine, the LEM DIPS, to land on the surface. It provides where the ascent engine failed and the 2 moonwalking astronauts had to wait in orbit for the CSM to be the active party to meet and recover them. The idea of using the LEM as a lifeboat for the trans-Earth coast has been investigated over the course of Apollo's development, with a fairly detailed plan emerging in August of 1968, so that's what Telmu Merlin Merritt starts building a plan on. The plan, as it exists, calls for jettisoning the service module and using the DIPS for the TEI burn, then the LEM as a lifeboat all the way home. They could then transfer power to the command module to maintain its onboard computer, but that plan imagines a scenario where the service module becomes inactive after flying past the moon. They're still 24 hours from the moon. So working from the few contingencies they've thought about, the thinking is to fly with the tunnel open so the crew has access to both spacecraft and use the LEM's batteries to supply low power to the SM's main B-bus for anything they might need in the Odyssey, things like navigation. But they might not have the option of relying on anything in the service module. Readings P-52 is a program to realign the guidance platform, the IMU. This is especially important because the lunar module gets its initial guidance data from the command module, and right now, as they're moving into the LEM, Odyssey has guidance and Aquarius is unpowered. Getting the platform as accurate as possible before the transfer would make it easier on the crew, but it takes 5 minutes they don't have. Besides, they can fine-tune their platform once the LEM is up and running, and there's more pressing needs for their remaining power. They need to try to get as much power into Battery A as possible so it's ready for re-entry.
Apollo 13, Houston, we'd like to charge Battery A now.
I don't know if we want to keep that LEM platform up.
Charge battery, Roger.
My mind, flight, keep that thing running for all that time. Go ahead. Okay, we've got an update on the time. Looks like we've got about 18 minutes until we get down to 100 PSI, and that's sort of the cutoff point. Alright, but we're charging Battery A. Well, that doesn't mean much in 18 minutes, though, but we're doing all we can do. Alright.
While Jack is managing the Odyssey, Fred's in Aquarius, but powering up the spacecraft isn't as simple as flipping. Is a delicate balance on Apollo missions. Space is cold, but unfiltered sunlight is hot, not to mention the instruments generate heat as well. The LEM sublimator dissipates the excess heat. Water is fed through a set of porous plates, one side of which is exposed to the vacuum of space, so the water turns into ice, then sublimates away. The challenge is that sublimating water can nudge Apollo 13's trajectory, but not using the sublimator is worse. On Apollo 11, the crew left the Eagle's instruments running without the cooling system after it was jettisoned, just as a test, and systems started failing after 8 hours. Apollo 13 needs instruments for a lot more than 8 hours. Jim soon joins Fred in the LEM, which has no comms yet, and Jack is up in the CM managing their last bits of power, shouting instructions from Houston down through the tunnel. The next task in the LEM is getting the life support up. Then they open the oxygen tanks and power up the cabin repress system to send oxygen into the cabin. They turn on suit fans to circulate that oxygen through both spacecraft and through the scrubbers to remove carbon dioxide and replenish the oxygen. Without the fans, they might from the command module. That's what we're doing. The Lunar Guidance Computer, or LGC, is the counterpart to the system in the command module, and like that system, it controls the spacecraft's attitude by firing the RCS thrusters, controls the big engines on their burns, keeps track of the spacecraft's position, and had programs for the lunar module-specific tasks like lunar landing and rendezvous. It also has its own inertial reference system, its own IMU, that needs some information to start getting it oriented. To do the course align, they have to take the CM gimbal angles, adjust them to compensate for the orientation of the LEM. This is the docking index they checked right before the explosion, and use that to reorient the LEM's own IMU. This is all normal procedure, and it has room for small errors like the docking angle. They can fine-tune this rough or coarse alignment, but right now they just need any alignment.
Okay, tank 2 fans going off. Okay, that leaves me with tank 1 fans on and tank 1 heaters on.
Jack is trying to keep the pressure in Tank 1 as long as possible to ...5 years younger than Jack Swigert. Once they get the LEMS IMU up, they can see that they've drifted more off course just in the time since they powered up the spacecraft, which is information Fido and Retro will have to take into consideration.
Odyssey, Houston, we need a command reset on your comm, and then we'd like you to power down the CMC, power down the IMU, heaters off on the IMU, but leave your battery A on.
Yeah. Got just about 82 hours out of the 2 primary cartridges. That's 2 guys. 44 is what LTA got, so that'd be 88 hours. We got a secondary. You're right.
Fred has already identified a problem for later: carbon dioxide. The lunar module is designed to keep 2 guys alive for 2 days. Now it's 3 people for maybe 4 days. They don't know exactly how they're getting home, but Fred notes out loud that they have a limited number of lithium hydroxide was partially to keep vital systems like the IMU heaters on. They need guidance and navigation for reentry, and they obviously can't use the CM's batteries. The IMU is delicate, and there's never been a test on it restarting after sitting in the cold for days. The one data point NASA has is that someone once left an IMU in their car overnight in the winter, and it still worked once it warmed up.
The advantage to doing it early is we can power the LEM back down. The only advantage to doing it early is you can do a big burn now and a mid-course and then power the LEM down. Otherwise, we've got to keep the LEM powered up clear till we get around the moon. Plus, it'd be in sight of the burn. I just hope the GNN hangs in on this one. I'm sure he can do that with me. Oh, boy.
Fred has just had another very prescient moment. He has already realized that their power management could get so tight they might not be able to power up the computer to do a mid-course correction burn, forcing them to do it manually.
Jack. Jim here. We need to know when we're getting close to gimbal lock in the LEM. We have no balls right now.
Okay, we want you to power up your 8-ball.
Hey, Flight GNC, the CMC and the IMU are completely powered down.
Okay. Okay, Jack, I got two Commander FDI breakers in, AC and DC, and the two Gasta breakers in, AC and DC. And next you want the RCS heaters all on, with the pressurized the RCS, and then the main sauce open, and I think they're already open.
Roger.
Copy, LA Control.
Right, put the TCA breakers in last. The TCA breakers in last.
Okay, TCA breakers in last.
And Fredo, get the TCA breakers in last, please.
Jack, are you reading level gimbal angles?
In the final stages before CM shutdown, as the LEM is still getting all its guidance data up, things are messy. The two spacecraft are talking to Houston with sometimes patchy comms overlapping. Instructions are getting jumbled, and it's a bad time to mishear or misinterpret something. No one's ever flown in this configuration. The LEM isn't meant to fly the CSM stacked on its head. They do have a digital autopilot, or DAP, on board, a forerunner of a digital fly-by-wire system that can manage RCS thrusters automatically.
Okay, we need to change that CSM weight.
Okay, Aquarius, your CSM weight is 63400.
Again, Fred brings up a big issue almost the instant Mission Control sees it. The DAP needs to know the CSM's mass so it can properly calculate the thrust it needs for engine burns. They're hauling 40,529 pounds, or 18,384 kilograms of propellant with them, and they aren't using it for the LOI burn, they're bringing it home. 2 hours and 45 minutes after the explosion, Jack closes the reactant valves on Fuel Cell 2, then powers down his inverters, the battery relay bus, the battery ties, and pulls the entry circuit breakers on batteries A, B, and C. It was a simple 6-step procedure.
Go ahead, Aquarius.
Okay, Odyssey is completely powered down now, according to the procedure that you read to Jack.
Figure out an adapter to get the CM's lithium hydroxide canister into the LM's ports. Simulators are up and running, so the backup crew can try to get some navigational reference points and burn characteristics up to the crew before they have to do any major events.
Okay, that concludes the power down of displays, and I have a P30 pad for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the purpose is a paracynthian plus 2 hours depth abort.
So let's talk about abort maneuvers. Almost immediately, there were a few options on the table, the first being a direct abort. In this scenario, the crew would use their big SPS engine to negate their velocity towards the moon, slowing them enough that the Earth's gravity would pull them back, effectively starting their fall back home. The window for that option came and went pretty quickly. Jack called down about the explosion at 55 hours and 55 minutes. At that point, their trajectory had them crossing into the moon's sphere of influence, meaning the moon's gravity is stronger than the Earth's, at 60 hours. A direct abort only option was a PC plus 2 burn of 845 feet per second, less than half the engine's capacity. They wouldn't need to separate the service module for this burn, and it would see them splash down in the mid-Pacific around 142 hours GET. The final option was a PC plus 2 burn using all the engine's capacity and keeping the inert SM attached, putting them in the Atlantic Ocean at about 133 hours GET. So if getting the crew home as fast as possible was ideal, why not ditch the dead weight of the service module and go with the first option, the PC plus 1? On the surface, it sounds great, but there are two potentially huge long-term complications. The first is trajectory. Yes, that burn profile would get them home faster, but it also opened the door for more errors building up over time. We've already seen how a little nudge over a big distance turns into a shove. If they use all of their fuel on this big burn, they wouldn't have anything left to do a mid-course correction. They do still have the lunar module ascent stage engine, but using it means jettisoning the descent stage, and that's where most of the have as much recovery support. And there's another reason NASA wanted a Pacific splashdown. The LEM was going to burn up in the atmosphere on re-entry, but the graphite cask of plutonium on board wasn't. This was the power source for some of the surface experiments, and NASA wanted to sink it in the Tonga Trench, a resting place that would satisfy the Atomic Energy Commission. The math already said that with proper management, they would have enough power and water to get home. No one wants to add more risk to the situation, so the slowest return is ultimately the safest. But first they need to get on a free return trajectory, meaning they'll loop around the moon and be shot back towards Earth. And they also need to learn how to fly all over again.
What's the crapping attitude? We're okay. God damn, I wish you'd get to something I know.
And Aquarius Houston, we've got you both on Vox.
Like to go what?
We get a chance here. We'd like to...
You want us on Vox, Doc?
We have you on Vox. We're reading you loud and clear, and the clock took good.
The CSM's SPS engine, the one they'd normally use for burns, has
Our plan is, we're at this time water critical in the LEM, so we'd like to use as little as possible. To do this, we're going to plan to make a free return maneuver of 16 feet per second at 61 hours, which is 37 minutes from now. So how do you feel about making a 16 foot per second burn in 37 minutes?
Well, we'll do it. Can you give us a little bit more time?
Well, we can give him another 15 minutes. Yeah, we can give another... Get a suggestion from him. We can figure it out whenever he wants it.
We'd like to get a suggested time from you. We can figure out a free return maneuver for any time you want to give us. So if you'll give us the time you'd like to shoot for, we'll figure out a pad.
Okay, that sounds good. I think if we have a little bit more time, we want to do it right. Stand by one. Let's shoot for an hour if we can, Jack. How's that?
Okay, Jim, how about 61 hours and 30 minutes? That's an hour and 5 from now.
The same time, but now they are. Engineers at the ground stations are using a large narrow beam antenna to detune the LEM's unified S-band radio system and pull its frequency away from the S4Bs. It's the best they can do until the stage impacts. With this mid-course maneuver coming up, Fred starts getting the LEM ready with a modified DIPS activation that saves power by skipping anything that isn't necessary or things Houston can monitor from afar.
Okay, the only item on page 10 is to deploy the landing gear.
Okay, we'll do that now.
The LEM's legs were folded in during launch, so they need to get them out of the way of the engine.
Stand by on step 1, Fred. We're getting a word for you. How do you like this sim?
Right. It's a beauty.
This is something you start to see as things get a little more under control. There's more banter and jokes to keep the mood light, and technicians threw all kinds of wild scenarios at crews and simulators.
Roger, Aquarius, and you go for the burn.
40%.
Okay, Aquarius, you're looking good.
They have on, the more water they use, so powering down everything they can actually saves them water. The crew has a moment of respite at this point, and can finally eat and try to settle into a sleep cycle that will always keep one man awake and in contact with Houston.
I'm afraid this could be the last moon mission for a long time. All right,
thinking about how to charge battery A by reversing the flow in the umbilical.
Jim and Jack are in the upstairs bedroom taking a nap now.
I didn't know that was upstairs.
We're now in the first space station.
73 hours and 46 minutes into the mission, 17 hours and 49 minutes since the explosion, they start some preparations for the PC. RefSmat adds a sort of mathematical filter to the values generated by the IMU and the desired orientation. With the right RefSmat in the computer, the onboard displays put the guidance information into the most useful framework for the crew. So the LEM's IMU was course aligned when they hastily moved in, meaning the computer might not be perfectly aligned to the basic reference coordinate system, meaning the computer might not know which way is up and where it's going. To align the platform, they need to use the AOT, or Alignment Optical Telescope, a device that sticks up out of the LEM with a little sunshade, can move in 60-degree increments, and extends into the cabin like a periscope. They use it to sight known stars. With a target star in the middle of the viewfinder, they can measure two angles in three-dimensional space, phi on the XY axis and theta on the Z axis. This allows the IMU to adjust itself, if needed, to make sure the guidance data is accurate. The problem is they can't see stars. When the oxygen tank exploded, everything was moving at the same velocity. To aim at a time and coordinates. They have the crew enter data to move the AOT to where the sun should be. If it's there, their alignment is good. It's something NASA has tried before. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin did it before landing on the moon.
There's the sun. Give me the AOT. Okay. Gentlemen, we got it, I think. Take a look. Okay, we got it. I think we got it. We have one diameter with it. We got it. Houston, Aquarius?
Go ahead, Aquarius.
Okay, it looks like the sun check passes.
We understand it checks out. We're kind of glad to hear that.
There was a cheer in Mission Control. Jerry said it felt like the last big hurdle. They know their navigation is good and they can get the crew on a path back home. Swinging around the moon is the only time the crew is out of radio contact from Houston. Radio waves can't pass through the moon. tourists. Even with everything going on, they get excited and start taking pictures, and Jim, watching them, is a little incredulous. "If we don't make this next maneuver correctly, you won't get your pictures developed," he tells them, to which they reply, "Well, you've been here before, and we haven't."
Aquarius, Houston. Houston, how do you read Aquarius?
We'll see where we're zooming off. We're leaving. That might be Tritium over there, Fred. Hey, if you let me use the 250, there's a beautiful shot of Stokowski, which we very seldom have. Well, this laser gauge, they just get me choosing again.
By the way, Aquarius, we see the results now from 12 seismometer. Looks like your booster just hit the moon, and it's looking good here.
Shut down.
Roger, shut down. Off. Roger, engine off.
The burn is good with very little residuals, meaning they don't have much they'll need to adjust later. But there is one odd result. The characteristics Houston sees aren't what was calculated based on simulator data. That's because the sims were done and the data calculated with Jim and Fred in the LEM and Jack in the command module. But Jack isn't in the Odyssey. He's been hanging out on the Ascent engine cover most of the time all three astronauts are in Aquarius, and that's where he was during the burn. The descent engine had to gimbal to compensate for the unexpected center of mass because of Jack, and Houston can see the effects on their new trajectory. So why was Jack in there? Command module pilots never got to see the LEM burns. They were always alone in the command module when the lunar module was flying. Gene Kranz figures he probably just wanted to watch. With the burn done, the crew gets right back into low power mode, knowing that Houston can still track them via telemetry.
Didn't get much work out of the eggs this time.
Half an hour after that, about 1 a.m. local time in Houston, a team was already in a conference room with training versions of everything the crew had on board and eventually canisters flown in from North American Aviation to figure out how to fit the square lithium hydroxide canisters from the Odyssey into Aquarius's round ports. The LEM measures the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere with a really neat little infrared device and displays the reading to the crew on a gauge that gives them the amount in millimeters mercury. 16 is the upper tolerable limit, though medically speaking they want to keep that number below 15 at all costs. Anything higher than 15 puts the crew at risk of sedation or loss of consciousness. The solution came together pretty quickly in that conference room. The initial idea was to tape the liquid-cooled garment's plastic storage bags around the square canister and use a suit hose in the LEM to blow air through the canister. Someone suggested they use the suit inlet hose because that gives warmer and moister air, which helps activate the chemicals in the scrubber. Someone else pointed out that the suction would suck the bag against the filter so they came
And then you're in a position to start your procedure, right?
The master alarm trips when the amount of CO2 passes 7.6 on the gauge, but they're still okay. And while the crew is pretty eager to start working on the adapter, Houston doesn't want to throw out the canister they're using just yet. They have a finite supply, so want to push the CO2 level a little more before they start dealing with the problem.
There she goes, gang. Good move.
That's the plus action.
Why not? You want to break all the
Give me the total hours then.
Flight retro.
Go retro.
Mid-course is probably not that big. It's just a short amount of tracking data that it's got.
Okay, and what you're saying is you expect it to grow smaller and control.
Looks like we've got to do with Earth little island. We need it aligned.
We have who's going to get one.
Fine.
Go find them.
One other point, our guys are now investigating a mid-course procedure that would not require powering up the GNN.
Get chilly. The other big item they need to deal with is sleep. No one can function well if they're exhausted, and the crew doesn't exactly have easy tasks to manage. At this point, Jim and Fred take a rest period, leaving Jack to mind the LEM and chat with Vance.
You wouldn't believe it, but I'm now in command of the LEM. Vance, I'm probably the only CMP that's ever witnessed a nipped burn sitting on the SN engine cab.
Flight film you.
Hey, Jack, we just thought it's about time you got a LEM checkout.
But he's given it me inert. Of course, I'll give him my command module, too, which is rather inert right now, too.
Well, you got to walk before you run, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Okay, I see the Earth, so I've very wisely shifted to forward.
Good boy. And we're in
I'll tell you, this Aquarius has really been a winner.
Well, everybody down here is
they'll consider this for flight base.
Okay, Jim, just as kind of a lead-in to this procedure that we're going to use for the mid-course burns, I'd like to say that we're going to use AGS, and it's going to be a manual burn. The attitude will be controlled manually. The start-stop on the engine will be controlled manually. We have a pretty good vector on you now, and it turns out you're coming in a little bit too shallow. So what that means is we're going to make our burns to come in a little more steeply, and we're going to be coming in around the dark side of the Earth. Therefore, to come in more steep, our thrust should be in the direction of the sun. Does that all make sense to you?
Re-entering the atmosphere isn't as simple as hitting the atmosphere and falling to the ocean. You can kind of think of the atmosphere like the and stop the engine manually. The help they'll get will come from the Abort Guidance System, or AGS, that will do some of the attitude control and also provide the 8-ball to show them how to point the ship. Aligning the Earth in the window as navigation data might sound like an insane way to fly in space, but like so many procedures on this mission, it wasn't thought up on the fly. The Terminator-aligned burn was a backup method tested on Apollo 8, Jim Lovell's previous flight to the moon. 90 hours and 8 minutes into Apollo 13, about 34 hours and 13 minutes since the explosion, Joe Kerwin is finally ready to walk the crew through building the lithium hydroxide canister adapter. But first, Joe's got some good news for Jack.
Okay, Jack, did anybody ever tell you that you got a 60-day extension on your income tax?
Yeah, I think somebody said that when you're out of your country, you get a 60-day extension.
First, they cut the punched holes off a cue card so they're left with a solid piece of stiff board. Then they cut one of the LCD Once separated, they put the red hose into the top of the bag so it goes to the center of the canister, then tape it shut, then stuff a towel in the bypass hole in the bottom. The last step is to use the suit loop configuration to get the adapter working. They end up with one hose by the LMP's window and the other with an extension running up the tunnel toward the command module. The red hose is floating around the docking ring. Then they turn on the cabin gas return to egress, ensuring the cabin air will flow through the hose plugged into the canister. That's the CO2 problem solved, and another benefit is that it gave the crew something to do to pass the time.
Roger, Fred, copy that. Is it a little chilly up there?
Yeah, we made the mistake of putting up the window shades, which we won't do again. And with this power down mode, we're not generating much heat internally, and it really did get chilly.
Yeah, I guess you'll have to generate your own heat in there for a while. Steve says unstow the extra heat.
Wants to know if we can... Joe, we need someplace to put the urine.
amps, so there's no power flowing. Then he depowers the buses by pulling the circuit breakers. This keeps the bus ties on so he can start everything up when he needs to. The other important update for Jack is a procedure to transfer LEM battery power to the command module by reversing the current in the umbilical. This wasn't in the spacecraft's original design specs, but the system is built in a way that allows for power to flow in both directions and has always been part of the LEM as lifeboat planning. More importantly, the process doesn't abuse any hardware, so there's no reason to think it won't work.
Okay, good deal. We copy that, Fred.
I believe so, Fred. I'll have to verify.
And to show you how relaxed we are about the entry, Ken is looking at giving you guys a chance prior to going into entry prep to snap a few pictures of the service line.
Ken is,
Yeah. He's got all that film up there and he doesn't want to waste it.
Oh, I thought maybe you'd want me to do a flip. These readings and come back and tell you what I have, huh?
That's right, Minnesota.
Yeah, no voice flight.
That's affirmed. There'll be no voice. And
Okay. Okay, Edward.
we presume, though, that there'll be somebody in the LEM that we can call if we have to get word to you.
And also the telephone.
Oh, yeah. There'll be somebody standing by. They'll run up into the bedroom and tell me to stop what I'm doing.
Houston has a long procedure for powering up the command module and turning on instrumentation so they can get some telemetry and see how the onboard systems are holding up in their no-power state. Before they can start drawing power from the LEM, they need to know whether the spacecraft is in good shape. The procedure has Jack close the circuit breakers that power the sensors in the systems they want to check. Then he prepares the inverters to produce the AC power the telemetry sensors need. He starts up the Odyssey's communication system and configures it for a high power signal for the purposes of telemetry. Next, he closes circuit breakers that provide power to the comms equipment and the central timing equipment. There's two issues with putting these on. The first is that they're big and bulky, so it would make it harder for them to move around. The bigger issue is that the suits don't have airflow on their own. Wearing the suit, they'd heat up fast, and without cooling, they'd sweat, which isn't ideal when they're rationing water and can't replenish lost fluids. Besides that, they'd have to get out of the bulky suit to cool down again, and being sweaty and damp in a cold spacecraft would make their situation worse. All in all, they opt to just double up on the constant wear garments.
Okay, Fred, on my mark, be 35 minutes to the burn.
We're counting down, aren't we, or do you want us to start anytime?
You can go anytime you want.
Your choice.
You guys are getting easy.
It's not time critical, Jim.
I understand. Okay, stand by. 2, 1, mark it. 3 minutes to go. correction, 2 minutes.
Fred's sleeping station now is the tunnel upside down with his head resting on the ascent engine. Jack's on the floor of the left. With the restraint system wrapped around his arm to keep down there.
While Fred sleeps, let's take one more rest break with one more ad break.
Jim, we've had a lot of people working on the entry procedures, and they'll be continuing to do so. We got a few ideas we'd like to toss at you so you can start thinking about them if you think you're in a position to discuss them without waking up the other guys. What do you think?
110 hours into the mission, Apollo 13 is about 32 hours from re-entry, and they don't have a procedure for powering up the Odyssey or getting the batteries charged. For the moment, Jack Loosma only has the broad strokes on hand. They know they're going to charge the batteries from the LEM through the umbilical. There's going to be another mid-course No crew has re-entered with suits since Apollo 7, but this is the first mission where they haven't had a chance to verify the integrity of the hatch between the two spacecraft. The possible hatch issue doesn't have anything to do with the accident. It has everything to do with Apollo 13 not following a normal mission. On a nominal lunar mission, regular events double as a chance for the crew to verify that the hatch won't leak their oxygen during re-entry. The spacecraft depressurize and repressurize and also dock and undock in lunar orbit. Each of these events has a chance for the hatch to fail, so if it doesn't, they know it's safe for re-entry. Apollo 13 did none of this, and they won't get to check their hatch until they jettison the LEM, and that's an hour before re-entry. That doesn't give them time to troubleshoot if something isn't right. Jim insists their hatch is like any other, and he isn't concerned enough to have to go through a suited re-entry. Another question is guidance. Houston is planning to have the crew use the moon and sun for a final platform alignment based on data from mission control. Then they'll let the computer take over.
Yeah, GNN entry.
Something like going first class.
The path that we're following.
The same one as the normal CSM to LEM power.
Okay, and we won't short out a descent battery?
No.
Okay, Jack, this procedure has not been tried out as such. However, the hardware paths through which the current flows are the same ones which we used during translunar trajectory, and there's not a problem with shorting out a descent battery, over.
That is a stunningly diplomatic no without saying it. They need 20 amp hours. That's what's missing from battery A. If they can get those 20 amp hours, they can get the crew home. The batteries power everything in the spacecraft through reentry and splashdown. Not just the computer and comms, but things like parachute deployment and oxygen flow. They also might need power for equipment post-landing. A full reentry battery is about 40 amps, so they have half that in battery A. The procedure Jack Luzma reads up is a long one that has the crew set breakers and switches to direct electric current from the LEM batteries characteristic of the CM's shape is that it can generate lift. The rounded bottom behaves almost like a wing. This lift is one of the main forces affecting their reentry. The other is the drag as they fall through the thickening atmosphere. The command module generates lift because its center of mass is offset from the vehicle's physical center, creating a relationship between these two forces, a usable lift-to-drag ratio, which is what Jack is thinking about. While the drag slows them down, the lift boosts them up, lengthening their path and carrying them towards their target point. They can manipulate this using RCS thrusters, either automatically or manually, to rotate the spacecraft around its central x-axis to change the lift vector. It's not much control, but it's some. This slight control becomes important with respect to the entry angle. If they come in too steeply, the high deceleration can lead to high g-forces that can damage the spacecraft and harm the crew. In this case, they can aim the lift vector up to glide a bit, keeping the command module in the upper atmosphere a little longer to lengthen their reentry and pull fewer g's. On the flip side, they can use the lift vector
Yeah, there was one piece of flight data that we needed that we didn't bring along this time.
What was that?
It's a big book with a lot of just plain old blank pages in it.
Yeah, when you get off nominal, like, you just need scratch paper, don't you?
Yeah. Okay, going back up into the refrigerator.
Hey, I thought it was the bedroom.
Well, it's got a new name now because it's about 30 degrees cooler.
Is it snowing in there yet?
Oh, it's snowing now. No, not quite.
It's not snowing, but there's nearly weather in the command module. The lack of good circulation has left a ton of moisture from their exhalations on pretty much every surface. There are water droplets covering the walls, ceiling, floor, wire harnesses, and panels. The crew figures it's probably the same behind the panels, which open the possibility of a short circuit when they power it on. But the
One, we want to get one into the hands of Flight ECOM, and it'll take about a minute or two. Sorry to wake you up for this, but take about a minute and then we'll read it up to you.
The delay is making copies for everyone in Mission Control who wants to follow along with the procedure. Finally, Vance starts with an overview of the data he's going to get ready. LEM pad, SM jettison, moon and sun viewing attitudes, course align angles for reentry, refsmat, and then they hit another pause in the proceedings.
Okay, Jack, going to hold up one. All the hordes of people that devised this procedure are going to be coming into the room in a minute, and they'd like to hold up till everybody can listen in. You get that, Jack?
They keep going, pausing to check the battery charge readings, and Jim starts to show signs of the strain they've been under.
Vance, we got to realize that we got to establish a work rest cycle up here, so we just can't wait around here to do these procedures all the time up to the bird. We've got to get them up here, look at them, and we
2 hours. The checklist is a delicate balance of turning systems off and on to get everything they need without drawing too much power. Once a CM has power, it will need guidance information. They'll use the LEM to point the command module's optics at the moon and to the sun to get the course align angles for the inertial platform. They need that crucial guidance information and to update the refsmat for the Odyssey so it knows which way is up and where it's going on the path to the Pacific Ocean. Once everything is back online, Jack can pull the breakers connecting the CM to the LEM, severing the connection. At that point, the command module will be powered up and the countdown of 120 amp hours will start. This will also restore their comms and data link with Houston. Once running, Jack will activate the breakers that supply main bus A and B power to the flight and post-landing bus, a separate system they'll use post-splashdown to keep ventilation going, lights on, and comms active. Then they'll power up the IMU, the optics system, and the guidance and navigation systems. The last item is a moon check right before entry, a simple visual check of their attitude by lining the moon up with a degree line.
All these steps just to get rid of a lead that's going to burn up in a half hour. These ridiculous. God damn it. Too many guys fan off.
Hey, Jim, Deke said he thought you were asleep.
All these steps woke me up. Thing you think is essential, but I just don't want to be throwing switches at the last minute. We're really thinking about getting that command module in good shape. Hey, Jim, this is Tom. The only reason we're bringing up the pings is to have another reference system just to control the limb when you jettison the thing. Over. Okay, Tom. I thought the nags and hole would have been sufficient for this when we first thought about this. Yeah, I agree, but they decided just in case we have any glitch with the yags, we want to make sure we get that limb off in a good shape, and I agree with you on keeping out all the garbage on it.
Fred's ill health has finally caught up with him. About 10 hours before re-entry, he's woken up from a rest period with chills. He said in the mission debriefing that he had to use the washroom, which meant stripping naked in a 42 their re-entry timeline, but having equipment on and generating a little heat will warm up the cabin. And since they have the LEMS computer up, they can take sightings of the moon and sun for a course align before running program P52 to fine-tune their alignment. This also opens the opportunity for the LEMS IMU to give the CM's IMU its alignment, same as they did earlier, but with different math. This also saves them the RCS fuel of moving the whole stack around to get the CM's optics lined up for a lunar sighting. Jack is back in the Odyssey, starting up the re-entry checklist that Ken read up, just getting things ready since they're still too far out to turn on the batteries. For now, he's configuring the power system to start the RCS thruster heating so they can have directional control, but it's not starting smoothly. The crew is exhausted, and Jack is looking at 5 handwritten pages of notes for a procedure he's never done.
Right, I just can't read my writing. Essential instrumentation bar, main beat closed.
That's affirmative.
Meanwhile, Jim and Fred are preparing for the final course correction burn, a burn so small they do it with the RCS thrusters instead of the main descent propulsion engine. Connect. Then a second explosive guillotine severs the umbilical from the command module. Finally, 3 shaped charges cut the ties that keep the 2 spacecraft together, creating a spring action that pushes them gently apart. Normally, the separation triggers electronics in the service module to fire its RCS thrusters until the fuel is gone so it's safely away from the command module, but that's not an option with a totally inert spacecraft on Apollo 13. Instead, Jim thrusts up and Fred controls the pitch, using the LEM to gain that distance. 82 hours and 8 minutes after their explosion, they finally see their spacecraft.
You got a little more fun? You just framing it down.
Copy there.
How's he looking? Control? Getting ready data right now. Roger. Guidance from flight. I'd like to confirm that you want to go back to the...
Here's it, Jack. Okay, I've got her, Houston.
Beautiful, beautiful. And for your information, Jim, you'll be coming up on an RCS caution light for helium. No sweat, over.
And there's one whole side. And changes. I don't know whether it did any actual deformation or not. Man, that's unbelievable. Yeah, and Joe, looks like a lot of debris is just hanging out to the side near the S-band antenna.
I know you're busy, but when Jack gets a chance, we'd like VAT-C current and main A voltage in the command module.
Joe forcibly breaks the crew's shared moment of shocked reflection and brings them back to the task at hand. They have about 4 hours left before they get home. The Odyssey's thrusters are working. Jack has gone through the reactivation checklist and has the computer on, and with the SM gone, their mass is way down, so the computer needs to readjust its firing commands for the new mass, and the new center of mass. Also, this configuration has never flown, so there's no real precedent for how it will fly. In Houston, there's a growing crowd. Top NASA officials, government representatives, program directors, retired NASA alumni, center directors, the president of lunar module manufacturer Grumman, they all pour into the viewing gallery. The actual room of mission control is increasingly packed with batteries as they can. Ken gets back on Capcom to double check some settings, and they find that the command module's RCS jets might be the source of the power drain, but turning them off doesn't seem to help. But they're still in okay shape.
And when you get that done, I'd like you to copy the entry pad.
This pad, like everyone the crew has gotten to this point, is telling the computer how to manage the coming event, but there are some differences here than with pads for burns. One notable part of this program is triggering the EMS, or Entry Monitor System. An accelerator detects the moment the spacecraft feels 0.05 Gs. That's the signal for the computer's entry software to change from its initialization program to control through the atmosphere. It also starts a monitoring function that updates the crew's displays in case they need to take manual control. The important moment for re-entry is the so-called capture point. This is the point where the command module no longer has the energy to leave the Earth's atmosphere. It's falling to the ocean. From here, drag will slow the spacecraft in its initial fall, a phase that comes with a communications blackout that will begin 17 seconds after entry interface and only accelerometer data and a manual landing. If they're able to maintain a constant G level as the command module decelerates about 4 Gs, they'd hit this theoretical point. But it's only something they do if the computer guidance and the entry monitoring system both fail. At 139 hours, 15 minutes, and 48 seconds, after about 76 hours of use, Battery 3 in the LEM descent stage fails, fully depleted. But they still have plenty of power, including in the LEM ascent stage, which they've been saving. The LEM power transfer has been terminated, and from now on, the command module relies on its own batteries.
Okay, Joe, can you give me any stars that I might try here?
That's affirmative, Vega and Altair.
Jack is fine-tuning the Odyssey's alignment with program P52, targeting the stars Altair and Vega. Their sun-moon alignment was good. Jim is really keen for Jack to finish up so they can get out of the LEM. The Earth is starting to get really big in the window.
That's affirmative.
Torque 'em, flight. Second.
Torque 'em, babe.
Roger. Okay, everybody stand by for LEM final SIP. Econ, do you confirm final SIP there? Have you seen anything?
Flight Econ.
Okay.
It's too short for us to see that thing.
Roger.
5. Left jetted.
Okay, copy that.
We got the events, flight.
Very well, Aquarius, and we thank you.
Flight that middle gimbal.
Flight guidance. Roger.
Close to gimbal.
Watch the middle gimbal angle come down.
Coming back out now.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, Odyssey Houston, just for your information, it looks as though Battery C will deplete around main shoot time. That's expected. You've got plenty of amp hours in the other batteries.
A little over an hour from reentry, and the crew on board and in Houston has done everything they can. The math says they're good on battery power, and their trajectory is good. Recovery forces are at their stations ready to recover the crew. Houston's calculations show that the extra power Apollo 13 has is almost exactly what they transferred from the LEM batteries.